Welcome back for another deep dive.
Always fun to do these.
So today we're going to be tackling something I think a lot of people have dealt with, rebuilding trust after a major conflict.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and we have some excerpts from this great article called How Do You Rebuild Trust in a Relationship After a Major Conflict?
And it really is a great article. I think it lays out a lot of really useful information.
Yeah, it's got a ton of great stuff. I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting is they tell the story of this couple, Liam and Emily.
Right.
And Emily finds out that Liam has been hiding this huge debt from her.
And that's one of the things the article talks about. You know, we think about betrayal.
Right.
And we immediately go to, like, infidelity or something like that.
Yeah.
This is different.
Right.
But it still creates that same sense of, like, my partner's keeping something from me. I don't feel safe.
It's like, how can I trust you with my heart if I can't even trust you with our bank account?
Exactly.
So the article lays out 10 steps to rebuilding trust. And to me, the most powerful one was this idea of forgiveness.
Oh, forgiveness is huge.
It is.
And I think, you know, a lot of people kind of struggle with that because it can feel like if I forgive somebody,
Right.
it means what they did was okay.
Exactly.
But that's not what it is.
And the article really talks about that.
Right.
It's more about releasing yourself from that burden.
Yeah.
You know, I used to think forgiveness was about letting the other person off the hook.
Uh-huh.
But I've come to realize that it's really more about, like I said, taking that power back for myself.
Yeah.
You know, saying, you hurt me, but I'm not going to let that pain control me anymore.
And that's really what forgiveness is at its core. It's about choosing to move forward without being weighed down by the past.
So how do you even begin to forgive someone, especially when that wound is still so fresh?
Well, the article gives some suggestions.
Okay.
It suggests starting with empathy. So, you know, it's like trying to understand the other person's perspective.
Oh, wow. That's really hard to do, I think, when you're in that moment.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's crucial because if we can shift our perspective, even just a little bit,
Right.
it can help us to move from a place of blame and judgment to a place of understanding.
Yeah.
And that's essential for forgiveness.
I can see that.
And this also ties into that idea of open and honest communication,
Right.
which the article emphasizes throughout.
Makes sense.
You have to be able to express your hurt, your anger, your doubts in a safe and constructive way.
And the article also talks about active listening,
Yes, active listening is so important.
because it's not just about hearing the words. It's about really absorbing them,
Right.
reflecting on them, and trying to understand the emotions behind them.
Exactly. And the article reminds us that active listening involves more than just nodding and saying, uh-huh.
Right.
It's about putting aside your own defensiveness.
Yeah.
Paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues. And asking clarifying questions to make sure you truly understand the other person's perspective.
That's a good point.
Right.
You know, this reminds me of a time when I received an apology that just felt so empty.
Oh, yeah.
It was just completely insincere,
We've all gotten those.
you know, and it actually made me feel worse.
Right, because it's not a real apology.
Exactly. And that's why the article stresses the importance of a sincere apology.
It has to be genuine.
Yeah, it's not just about saying the words. It's about expressing genuine remorse, empathy, and a commitment to change.
But it needs to be specific.
Oh, good point.
They need to acknowledge the wrong they committed and how it impacted you.
So it's not enough to just say, I'm sorry.
Right.
They need to say something like, I'm sorry I lied to you about the debt. I know that broke your trust and made you feel unsafe, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused you.
Exactly. That level of specificity and ownership is crucial for the apology to feel genuine.
And for that healing process to begin. And I think that sincerity, combined with the open communication and the active listening, creates that foundation for forgiveness,
Right.
which then paves the way for rebuilding that trust.
Absolutely. It's like a chain reaction. One positive action leads to another, slowly but surely mending those broken pieces.
I like that.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive on rebuilding trust.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this idea of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with this idea that forgiveness can actually lead to a stronger relationship.
That's a good point.
Because it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like, how can something good come from something so painful?
It does seem that way at first.
Yeah.
But the article makes a good point, I think.
Okay.
It basically says when you go through that fire of conflict
Right.
and come out the other side and you've forgiven each other,
Yeah.
you come out with a deeper understanding of yourselves
Right.
your partner, and how resilient your bond is.
I see. That like you weathered the storm together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And you're stronger because of it.
But is there a risk, though? Like, what if you forgive too easily?
Sure.
Will the other person not take it seriously? Like, are they just going to do it again?
That's a great question, and the article does address that.
Okay, good.
It says, forgiveness is not about letting the other person off the hook.
Okay.
It's about freeing yourself.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you have to pretend it didn't happen.
So how do you balance that forgiveness with holding them accountable?
Well, the article talks about setting boundaries.
Oh, okay.
And, so you're communicating what you will and will not tolerate.
Right.
It's not about punishing the other person.
Okay.
It's about creating a safe and respectful space for both of you.
So boundaries are like the guardrails, on a winding road.
I like that, yeah.
They keep you from going off the cliff.
Exactly.
But boundaries alone aren't enough, right?
No, they're not.
What else has to happen to rebuild that trust?
Well, the article talks about demonstrating reliability over time.
Okay.
Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
You consistently show up for your partner, follow through on commitments,
Yeah.
and are transparent.
So it's not about those big gestures.
Right.
It's the small, everyday things
Exactly.
that build up the trust again.
It reminds me of that saying,
What's that?
trust is built in drops and lost in buckets.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's the little moments that matter.
Yes. And, it's also important to remember
Yeah.
that rebuilding trust isn't linear.
Oh, that's a good point.
You don't just check things off the list and boom, you're done.
Right.
There are going to be ups and downs.
Yeah.
There will be setbacks and moments of frustration.
You take 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Exactly.
So patience is key.
Patience is key.
And a good dose of self-compassion.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's easy to get discouraged.
Right. And this is where the article's emphasis on self-care comes in.
Oh, yeah, that was a good point.
You have to prioritize your well-being.
Right.
It's not selfish. It's essential.
Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
I love that they brought that up.
Yeah.
So the article also talks about, focusing on the positive in the relationship. And I think that can be easy to forget when you're dealing with all this,
It's true.
the betrayal.
Yeah, we get so focused on the negative.
But it's important to nurture the good parts too.
It is. It's like a garden.
Oh, okay.
You can't just focus on pulling out the weeds.
Right.
You have to water the flowers.
And give them sunlight.
Exactly. And those positive experiences become like little seeds of trust, taking root and blossoming over time.
I love that. And that makes me think about the last point they made
Okay.
about embracing growth and change. So it's not about going back to how things were before.
It's about using the experience to move forward.
And become stronger together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Conflict can be a catalyst for positive transformation.
So it's like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's right.
But to do that, you have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Admit your mistakes and be open to feedback.
It's not easy,
No, it's not.
but the article emphasizes that this vulnerability is essential for rebuilding trust.
Right.
It's about being willing to let your guard down.
To show your true self.
Exactly. Flaws and all
And
that.
trust that they'll still love you.
Yeah,
That's scary.
it is. But the article reminds us that vulnerability is not weakness.
Okay.
It's actually strength.
Okay.
It's the foundation of intimacy and connection.
So when both partners are vulnerable,
Yeah.
that creates a space for healing.
And growth.
So you're taking a leap of faith together.
Yes.
Yes.
You're trusting that even though you've been hurt,
Yeah.
you can create a future where you feel safe, loved, and respected.
You're saying, okay, here's my heart. Handle it with care.
Exactly. And that takes a lot of courage.
It does, but you're right. The article reminds us that vulnerability is not just about expressing your feelings. It's about being open to receiving your partner's vulnerability as well.
Yes, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
You're creating a safe space for both of you.
Where you can both be vulnerable.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
And that can be incredibly bonding.
Yeah, I can see that.
You create this sense of mutual understanding and support.
And you can get through anything together.
Exactly. So welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into rebuilding trust.
Going through this article really highlighted for me that rebuilding trust isn't just about fixing the problem.
Right.
It's about transforming the entire relationship.
Like taking those shattered pieces
Right.
and making something even more beautiful.
Exactly. And I think that's where embracing the growth and change is so important.
Yeah, it's recognizing that conflict can actually be positive.
Oh, wow.
It can make you evolve as a person and as a couple.
So you're using the experience to move forward
Exactly.
rather than trying to go back to how things were before.
You got it.
And that takes a willingness to learn from the past.
Mm.
Acknowledge your own role in it.
Absolutely.
Be open to making those changes.
And that's not always easy,
No, it's not.
especially when you're feeling defensive.
Yeah,
You don't want to admit you were wrong.
right.
But the article really emphasizes that vulnerability is key.
It's about letting your guard down.
Yeah. Showing your true self.
Pause and all.
Exactly. And trusting that your partner will accept you anyway.
That's a big ask,
It is.
especially when you've been hurt.
But remember, vulnerability is not weakness.
Okay.
It's actually strength.
It's the foundation for real intimacy.
and connection, yeah.
So when both partners are willing to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
it creates that space for healing.
And for growth.
And you said it's a two-way street, right?
Absolutely.
It's about being open to receiving your partner's vulnerability too,
Yes, you have to create a safe space for each other.
where you can both be yourselves.
Exactly. And that kind of shared vulnerability can be so powerful.
I can imagine.
It really builds that understanding and support.
And you can get through anything together. It's not just about the individual actions you take.
Right.
It's about the energy you bring to the relationship.
That's a good point.
You're cultivating that compassion, empathy, forgiveness.
Yeah.
So even when you make mistakes,
Which you will.
you approach each other with understanding.
And a willingness to work through it.
Exactly. And that kind of energy, I think, can be contagious.
It can.
It transforms not just the relationship, but your individual lives as well.
It's like an upward spiral.
I love that.
Each act of kindness, each moment of vulnerability strengthens that bond.
And as you continue on this journey of rebuilding trust,
Yeah.
it's important to remember it's not a destination, it's a process.
You got it.
There will be bumps in the road.
There will be.
There will be times when you get frustrated or discouraged.
Yeah.
But the key is to keep showing up for each other
Keep communicating.
and keep choosing love over fear.
And remember, trust, once restored, can be even stronger.
Than it was before.
Yeah, it becomes the foundation for a really fulfilling relationship.
That's beautiful.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive.
We covered a lot of ground today,
We did.
exploring the complexities of rebuilding trust.
But ultimately, it's about that transformative power.
Yes, and even though the journey might be challenging,
It is.
it's also an incredible opportunity.
For growth, connection, and deeper understanding.
So no matter what kind of relationship you're in,
We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights.
and inspired you to embrace the journey of rebuilding trust.
Remember, even though the vase might be shattered with patience, love, and willingness, you can create something beautiful and lasting.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.